The Golden State Warriors are heading into the 2026-27 season with a significant problem on their hands. An underwhelming offseason has left the franchise shorthanded at a critical moment, and the pressure that comes with that situation is falling squarely on the shoulders of Jimmy Butler, a pressure that Klay Thompson notably never had to deal with when he returned from his own devastating injuries. Hey, what's up, everyone? Before we jump into everything today, that like button right there is what decides if this video hits hundreds or thousands of people. 1 second is all it takes. But the impact on this channel is massive. Go ahead and hit that like button right now. Seriously, it's the simplest thing you can do, and honestly, the best way to back this content up, because every single like pushes us further. So hit it now. The contrast between Butler's situation and Thompson's famous comeback is stark, and it tells a lot about how much this Warriors team has changed. When Thompson made his much-anticipated return to the court in January 2022, he was stepping back into a Golden State squad that was thriving. The Warriors were sitting alongside the Phoenix Suns at the very top of the Western Conference standings, having put together one of the best starts of any team in the league that season. That meant the franchise could afford to ease Thompson back into the rotation, give him time to find his rhythm, absorb whatever growing pains came of returning from 2 consecutive leg injuries, and still feel confident about the team's overall direction. And even when Golden State hit a rough patch after Thompson's return, finishing that stretch of the season barely above .500, going 23 wins and 20 losses over the final 43 games, it didn't matter. Thompson averaged over 20 points in 32 appearances, but shot a then career-worst 38.5% from three-point range and finished the regular season ranked only 8th on the team in plus-minus. None of those individual struggles mattered in the bigger picture. The Warriors entered the playoffs as the 3rd seed and ultimately lifted their 4th championship trophy in 8 seasons. Thompson got to return to a winning culture, earn his legs back, and let the chips fall where they may because the roster around him was already built to win. That luxury simply does not exist for Jimmy Butler. The Warriors' offseason has been widely criticized as disappointing, and the honest assessment entering the new season is that Golden State is not a team positioned to compete at the top of the Western Conference. Not even close to it. Butler is expected to miss the first several months of the season as he continues to recover from a major injury. Projections have him returning somewhere around January or February 2027, and by that point, the Warriors' record could already tell a very different story from the one Thompson returned to in 2022. Rather than returning to a team comfortably in the top 2 seeds of the West, Butler is far more likely to return to a club fighting just to stay relevant in the playoff picture. Or worse, a team that has already fallen outside the postseason conversation entirely. Some analysts believe Golden State could find itself among the bottom 5 teams in the Western Conference by the time Butler is medically clear to play. That is an uncomfortable reality, because it means the franchise will be counting on an impactful performance from a 37-year-old star coming off major injury surgery, needing him to function at a high level almost immediately just to salvage something from the season. The physical demands of that kind of return are significant on their own. Returning from a serious injury at 37 is not the same as returning at 31, as Thompson did. Recovery timelines, conditioning requirements, and the adjustment period to game speed all become more complicated as players age. Asking a player in that situation to also carry a struggling team's playoff hopes from the moment he steps back on the floor is asking a great deal, arguably an unfair amount. There is one scenario where the pressure on Butler effectively disappears. If the season is already lost by the time he comes back and the Warriors are purely focused on the future, that would remove the immediate win-now burden from his shoulders. But that outcome would be disastrous in its own right, particularly for Steph Curry, who is in the final meaningful chapter of his Hall of Fame career and deserves better than a throwaway season. The most optimistic, realistic hope for Golden State is that the team can play well enough before Butler's return to remain at or near the .500 mark, keeping the playoff door at least cracked open. If that holds, then Butler's return could serve as a spark that pushes the Warriors into the postseason picture. And Butler himself will have personal motivation to perform. He is on an expiring contract, meaning every game he plays is essentially an audition, whether to convince Golden State to re-sign him using their projected cap space or to advertise his value to other teams ahead of free agency. Both the team and the player need a strong second half of the season from Butler. The difference from 2022 is that neither can afford to wait for it. What makes this situation particularly difficult is the lack of margin for error. Thompson's 2022 comeback unfolded inside a safety net. A stacked roster, a proven coaching staff, and a fan base that was patient because the wins were already stacking up. Butler does not get that net. He will be parachuting into a team that needs him from day one, in a conference that has only grown more competitive, with no room to ease into the role gradually. The Warriors built the season around him, and the reckoning for a disappointing offseason will rest largely on how quickly he can reclaim his elite level of play. Nearly 6 weeks into NBA free agency, and Jonathan Kuminga still does not have a new team. The 23-year-old forward, who parted ways with the Golden State Warriors this offseason after years of on and off tension with the franchise, finds himself in a waiting game, and the team most interested in signing him faces its own set of obstacles before any deal can happen. The Cleveland Cavaliers have emerged as one of the frontrunners to land Kuminga alongside the Los Angeles Lakers. But Cleveland's path to acquiring the former 7th overall pick is directly tied to their ability to move on from another ex-Warrior, German point guard Dennis Schroeder. Schroeder landed in Cleveland just months ago as part of the trade that sent DeAndre Hunter to the Sacramento Kings. The deal also included Keon Ellis, who has since departed. But despite arriving only recently, Schroeder appears to already be on the move again. According to Cleveland.com insider Chris Fedor, who covers the Cavaliers closely, the Cleveland front office is actively exploring trade possibilities involving Schroeder. The goal is to either reconfigure the roster or create enough financial flexibility to pursue Kuminga and, potentially, Denver Nuggets restricted free agent Peyton Watson with real conviction. For Kuminga, the appeal of Cleveland is clear. The Cavaliers are coming off a strong season that ended with a conference finals exit, making them legitimate title contenders with a young core already in place. More importantly, Kuminga has a pre-existing relationship with Cleveland head coach Kenny Atkinson, who previously served as an assistant with the Warriors. That familiarity could ease the transition and provide a structure that suits Kuminga's developmental needs as he enters what should be a prime stretch of his career. The financial reality, however, is complicated. Kuminga wants a contract in the neighborhood of $20 million per year, which is a significant commitment. A sign-and-trade framework would likely be required to make the deal happen, as Cleveland navigating a salary cap to accommodate that kind of money outright will be difficult without clearing space first. Moving Schroeder, who is still owed more than $30 million over the next 2 seasons, would go a long way toward making those numbers work. It is worth noting the irony embedded in this situation. Schroeder himself arrived in Golden State just last season before being included in the blockbuster mid-season trade that brought Jimmy Butler to the Warriors at the 2025 deadline. He had played only 24 games in a Warriors uniform, just 9 of those alongside Kuminga before the two were separated by the franchise. Now, almost a year later, the futures of those two players are once again intertwined, this time on the other side of country. Kuminga cannot join Cleveland without Schroeder leaving first. The Cavaliers appear prepared to move Schroeder, regardless of how the Kuminga pursuit plays out. Cleveland's coaching staff and front office have reportedly been exploring trade packages involving the veteran guard throughout the summer, sensing an opportunity to either gain financial leverage or find a better roster fit. At 32 years old, Schroeder still provides value as a capable backup point guard with playoff experience, which means there should be interest from other teams willing to absorb his contract in exchange for something useful. From Kuminga's perspective, patience remains the operative word. He spent much of his time in Golden State in a similar holding pattern, waiting for his role to expand, waiting for the organization to commit to him long-term, waiting for clarity that never quite came. Now, as a free agent, he is waiting again, this time for 2 franchises to work out a personnel transaction before he can even begin formal negotiations on his own future. The clock is ticking for everyone involved. Preseason camp is approaching, and teams want their rosters settled. If Cleveland can find a taker for Schroeder in time, the Kuminga signing could happen quickly. If the trade market for the German guard remains slow, the Cavaliers could be forced to pivot toward other options, leaving Kuminga in an increasingly uncomfortable no-man's land between teams and expectations. For now, he waits, just as he always has, for someone else to make the first move. What complicates the picture further is the number of moving parts. The Cavaliers also have interest in Peyton Watson, Denver's restricted free agent, meaning they are managing multiple targets at once and may ultimately have to choose between them based on what the market allows. Watson is younger and less expensive, while Kuminga offers a higher ceiling and a more proven track record at the NBA level. Both fit a need in Cleveland's forward rotation, particularly after the departure of players from their previous roster configuration. The front office will need to make a definitive decision soon, because waiting too long risks losing both players to other suitors. It is a calculated gamble, and the Schroeder trade situation sits at the center of all of it. Until that piece moves, the Cavaliers remain stuck, and so does Kuminga. A bold trade proposal has surfaced that would send Golden State Warriors superstar Steph Curry to the San Antonio Spurs. And while it reads like something out of basketball fantasy, the underlying logic is more grounded than it might initially seem, especially given the turbulent summer the Warriors have endured. The hypothetical trade, which has been circulating among NBA trade analysts and fans online, would send Curry to San Antonio in exchange for a return package featuring point guard De'Aaron Fox, center Luke Kornet, and 4 first-round draft picks, including selections in 2027 via Atlanta, 2028 via San Antonio, 2030 via San Antonio, and 2031 via San Antonio. It is a haul that would give the Warriors significant draft capital and an established all-star guard to build around, while positioning the Spurs to compete for a championship immediately. Before getting into whether the deal makes sense for either side, it is important to understand the conditions that would need to be in place for any Curry trade to even become a conversation. The 4-time NBA champion would first need to decline signing a contract extension with the Warriors this offseason, something that is not yet a certainty, but becomes more plausible given Golden State's disappointing summer of roster moves. If Curry passes on an extension, he would become a free agent at the end of the 2026-27 season. From there, he would need to request a trade, either before or during the season itself. Only then would the Warriors begin entertaining offers. That chain of events is far from guaranteed. Curry has spent his entire professional career in Golden State and has built a legacy there that is unmatched in the franchise's history. For championships, for all-star appearances, and the title of the greatest shooter the game has ever seen. All of it tied to the Warriors' blue and gold. The sentimental pull of staying in the Bay Area through the end of his career is powerful, and for many who know him, it would not be surprising to see him sign the extension and commit to the franchise regardless of how competitive the team is projected to be. And yet, the scenario is not entirely implausible. The Warriors' offseason has been described widely as a letdown. The roster surrounding Curry heading into 2026-27 raises legitimate questions about whether the team can be competitive in a loaded Western Conference. If Curry looks at the current situation and concludes that his remaining elite years will be wasted on a rebuilding project, the conversation around availability could shift. Should that happen, the Spurs will become one of the most compelling landing spots in the league. San Antonio is a franchise on the rise, anchored by generational talent Victor Wembanyama, and a core that includes rising stars Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper. The Spurs have been building steadily toward a championship window, and adding a player of Curry's caliber, even at 38, would accelerate that timeline dramatically. His shooting gravity alone would open up driving lanes and corner opportunities for Wembanyama in ways that no other player in the league could replicate. From a financial standpoint, the proposed trade also has internal logic. De'Aaron Fox carries a substantial salary, and pairing him with Kornet's contract as outgoing pieces would help offset what Golden State would owe Curry. The Spurs would be absorbing a larger salary while sending out 2 contracts, keeping the books relatively balanced. The main question for San Antonio is whether trading Fox and 4 first-round picks is too steep a price. Fox is a legitimate all-star who has averaged over 25 points per game in recent seasons and represents the kind of proven star that takes years to develop. Packaging him alongside 4 future picks for a 38-year-old Curry is a significant gamble. The Spurs would essentially be betting that Curry's presence, even for 1 or 2 elite seasons, combined with Wembanyama and the young core would be enough to win a title before the window narrows. For the Warriors, Receiving Fox, Cornette, and 4 first-rounders would be a reasonable consolation prize, a new franchise cornerstone for the post-Curry era alongside the draft equity to rebuild quickly. Fox, at 28 years old, would give Golden State a legitimate star to build around for the next several years, and the 4 picks would provide the organization flexibility to retool through the draft. General Manager Mike Dunleavy Jr. would have the building blocks for a genuine reconstruction rather than a slow decline. The reality, though, is that this trade remains speculative. Curry has given no public indication he wants out of Golden State, and the Warriors have every reason to want to keep him. There is also the matter of his ongoing contract extension negotiations, with an August 29th deadline looming as one of the more significant dates on the Warriors' calendar this offseason. If Curry signs that extension, the trade conversation becomes moot. If he does not, the speculation around his future in the Bay Area will only intensify. Until that deadline passes one way or another, the Spurs' proposal, however compelling in theory, remains exactly what it is, a fascinating hypothetical in an NBA summer that has already produced more than its share of drama and unexpected moves.